for coming tonight and then trying some of our wines. I mean, this is what it's all about. My name's Dave Guffy, and I have worked with the Hess family for the past 26 years. We are the Hess Collection Wines out of Napa Valley. The winery was started by Donald Hess, who was a Swiss businessman, came to Napa Valley in 1976, 77. Not in the wine business. He was actually in the water business. And he was there. His business deal did not work out, but he wanted to try the Napa Valley wines. And you have to remember, this is in the mid 70s. So Napa Valley was just getting going in terms of being on the world stage for wine. So he stayed over, he went to the restaurant, he asked them for the best Chardonnay and the best Cabernet. Any guesses on what those wines might have been back in the 70s? It was BV, Georges de Latour. So, and Donald, Swiss, had never really tasted American wine, and he was blown away by the quality of these wines, so much so that he decided to extend his trip. He wanted to learn more about the wine business. Again, you got to put yourself back in the space and time, 70s. So what does he do? He picks up the phone and he calls Robert Mondavi, because in his motel, in every drawer, there was a phone book, right? So you looked in the white pages. And when you called somebody, you actually had to answer the phone because there was no answering machine. So Robert picks up the phone and he's like, hello, you don't know me, I'm Donald Hess. I'd like to learn more about wine. And that started a lifelong friendship between Donald and Robert, and it got him started in the business. So it makes me laugh, but one of the things that Mondavi told Donald was, he goes, listen, if you want to come, Napa vines are great, and we think the future is bright. I recommend that you buy a vineyard right down here in Napa Valley. The soil's deep, the land is fertile, and it makes really, really great wine. But Donald was from Switzerland, so he gravitated to the home of the winery, which is up on Mount Veeder. So anyways, Donald didn't listen to his advice in terms of going to Napa Valley, but he settled up on Mount Veeder. Mount Veeder is one of the 5 mountain appellations in Napa Valley, right? You got Veeder, you got Spring Mountain, you got Diamond Mountain, you have Howell Mountain, and you have Atlas Peak. Our vineyard and our home is located about halfway up Mount Veeder, at about 900 feet in elevation. The mountain itself goes up to 2,400 feet, and we have a vineyard near the very top of there as well. One of the things that the Hess family did best is they bought land. So the first thing he did was he bought a vineyard, and then shortly afterwards he bought a second vineyard, both of them on Mount Veeder. The reason that was, turned out to be brilliant is because over the course of time we added to that, and now we have 5 different vineyards around Napa Valley. So we really control our own destiny within the valley. So in those days, it was very common for somebody to come in, want to start a winery, have it be family run and developed. These days, it's much more unique and much more rare. And we're really happy and proud to say that it's still in the family. And now his second generation, his daughter and her husband, Tim and Sabrina, and their last name is Person, is running the winery. And they've been running the winery for the last 15 years. So it's not a recent transition for us. It's a stable and secure transition. It's very important for me, and that's why I've been there 26 years, is because the family is, A, has great vineyards, and B, has always done the right thing when it comes to wanting to improve quality. And so often in our side of the business, what that means is in more investment, whether it's replanting a vineyard or renovating the winery with new technology and equipment. The family has been ready to step up all along the way. Tonight we're going to have 5 different, 4 Cabernets and a red blend. But the first wine that I want you to try is a brand new wine that we're making, and we call it the Hess Maverick Ranches. So this one is in your upper right-hand corner in front of you. And the reason I want to start with this one is I feel like it's the lightest Cabernet, so it's the best one to start with. This is a Cabernet that is not coming from Napa, and the only wine that you'll have tonight that's not Napa. This is from Paso Robles. You guys know Paso? Like it? Yeah, me too. So before I came to Hess, I made wine down in Santa Barbara County for 10 or 15 years. And I had some friends, and I knew Paso Robles from living down in that region, which is very close. But you have to understand, from Napa Valley, Paso Robles is about a 5-hour drive in the car, so it's quite some distance away. The reason that we wanted to go down there was we wanted to geographically get away from Napa and represent Cabernet that had a different flavor profile. And the flavor profile that I suggest to you that this wine has is something that is a little more fruit forward and a little bit softer. You can almost see the color is good, but it's not as dark and dense as some of our Napa Cabernets. The climate down there is very warm in the daytime, but it has that big diurnal swing. So very hot nights, but very cool, very hot days, but very cool nights. And that's because it's just over the hill from the Pacific Ocean. So when you get up, I'm talking hot, so 105, 106 degrees in the summertime, these Cabernets get fully ripe, and it keeps the tannins nice and soft. What do you smell off this wine? It's got good medium body, right? It's not over the top, it's not over extracted, and it's a wine that you could really just sit and sip even without some food to it. It's very soft, very approachable, and this is the style, I think, of why Paso Robles Cabernets have really taken off in the last decade or so. Very easy to drink, very delicious. Yeah, so we have actually the original winery up on Mount Veeder, and we built a second winery down in Napa because we needed more room. There was no room to expand up on the hill. Yeah, the only other thing I'd like to mention about this wine is, unfortunately, Mr. Hess passed away a few years ago, and he was just a great man. His only mistake in business was hiring me, but besides that, he was pretty solid. But one of the things that he always did is he took the harder road on a lot of business deals. So it started off in Switzerland. His family had a brewery, and had a brewery in the family for only 6 generations. When his father passed away, he was quite young. He just got out of college. He was thrust into the spotlight of running the brewery, and he did so for a couple of years. But he kind of realized this is not gonna quench my business thirst, and I'm going to take you even further back in time. This was in the 50s. And so he sold the family business, which I thought took some guts. And he gambled on the fact that he thought maybe someday bottled water would be big. And so that was where a lot of the money came from. He developed a water company in Switzerland called Valser Water. It came from the town of Vals, which is up in the Swiss Alps, which was no easy thing to get to either. I've been up there. It's a 1-lane road. It was hard to get the water down into the valley where the populations were. But he grew that water to the number 3 water in Europe. And that's actually what he was doing in Napa Valley, looking at more water opportunities when he stumbled into this whole wine thing. And you can fast forward, to Donald's time in Napa Valley, where he chose to go up on the mountains, which the farming is much more difficult than the valley floor. And then finally, on his latter stages of business, he went down to Argentina and resurrected a winery that's called Bodega Colomé. Do you guys like Argentine wines? Yeah, me too. So that's the thing. The main street in Argentina is Mendoza. He went to Salta, where the elevation starts at 6,000 feet. And he established the world's highest elevation vineyard, Altura Maxima, that's over 12,000 feet. And in the very northern part of Argentina on the base of the Andes. And he likes challenges. And so when we decided we were going to develop a new program, we decided Maverick would be a good name for it. And that's where the Maverick Ranches comes from. So cheers. Yeah. And this is a relatively new thing. We started this in 2020. It's a small production. So if you've never seen it or heard of it, you're not behind the curve. And really, that's why we're out here to talk about these things. Okay?
It's interesting how Paso Robles the last 10 years really start to take off.
Yes.
We do have many of our customers always say, okay, do you have something a little bit softer than the traditional Napa Valley? And when you go to Paso Robles, you can get that right away, very soft tannin, velvet almost.
Yes.
It tastes like almost not California, but still you do have the structure of the wine is there, but the finish is more like European style.
Yes, yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's a fun town if you get the chance. Roughly halfway between LA and San Francisco. It's kind of a cowboy town, but it's become a wine center, of course, because Paso Robles has been growing grapes for 60 years or more. So it's well established, and once you're done with Napa and Sonoma or Santa Barbara, it's a great alternative place to go. So I'd recommend it. Okay, now I'm going to do something a little bit different. I want to take you over to the lower left-hand side, and that's going to be the Lion Tamer Cabernet. And before I guess to get into this wine, how should I start? When I got to the winery in 1999 as a winemaker, you're always charged with how do we get better? You know, they had a great history going into it, but of course every year you want to improve quality, get better, get better. So I looked at the vineyards up on Mount Veeder, and Cabernet was king. There was a lot of Cabernet planted. We had some Merlot up there. We had a little bit of Petit Verdot up there. And those were the blending grapes that I had to work with. So I tasted the wines in the cellar, and the problem was Cabernet was so tannic and so big because the mountain grapes, they grow smaller, and so they tend to be very tannic wines. And the Merlot, which is supposed to be the soft blending grape, because of the mountain condition, was also really muscular. And so I was like, Merlot, you're not working for me. Petit Verdot is a little too cool up there to grow Petit Verdot consistently. And so I decided to try some Malbec. And it's interesting, we were just talking about Argentina, but Malbec, turns out, works really, really good on Mount Veeder. So when I planted it and I got my first crop a couple years later, I said, holy smokes, this is really good stuff. And the reason that I liked it is that it blended so well with Cabernet because you can soften the tannins naturally. So as a winemaker, when you have an overly tannic wine, you've got a couple of choices. You know, if you can fine it with egg whites, which is supposed to smooth the wine down a little bit. But I would suggest to you that if any of you work with wood and use sanding paper, egg whites are like a very fine grit. You're gonna have to sand a long time to get that smooth. So the better approach in my book is to get the fermentation right, number one, but secondly, have a better blendy grape. And Malbec wound up to be that grape because it's dark, it's full and rich on the palate, and it masks those tannins in the end. So you have this very big wine that now has a sort of a velvet glove wrapped around it. That's what this Lion Tamer series is. Now, the first wine I wanted you to try is the Cabernet, and I did that for ulterior motives. I want you to now taste this wine, and you'll taste why Napa Valley is known for Cab. I mean, I love the Paso Cab, but taste this wine and find the depth and the richness on the palate. Do you feel more plush? Do you feel more weight? It's bigger, right? Not necessarily tannic, but there are more tannins. It's just, there's more, huh?
It's a lot longer lasting.
It's longer, lingering in your palate. It's, there's just more stuff on your palate. And that is Napa Valley. And that is the little bit of Malbec that we blend in here just around the edges.
What's the percentage? Okay, go ahead.
What percent?
So in this vintage, it was 6 or 7%. And I'd like to talk about the next wine as well, because this is a Lion Tamer red blend. And we actually, in this line of wines that we're making, we came out with the red blend first. And the red blend is focused on Malbec. So when we get there, I'll talk a little bit more about it. But the Malbec is the thing that's rounding this Cabernet out, making it a little smoother, helping the density on the palate, but definitely rounding the tannins out. And the name Lion Tamer actually came from, one day I got pulled up to the office because I was planting a lot of Malbec. I started with 3 acres, we wound up with 50. 50. That's more Malbec than anybody else in Napa Valley was growing. And the reason is that we needed it, for the Cabernet programs, and I wanted to develop a red blend. And oh yeah, by the way, we make 100% Malbec for our wine club people. And we couldn't get enough of that wine, so we just kept planting more and more out in the vineyards. And they're like, Dave, why are you planting all this Malbec? It's Cabernet country. And I'm like, well, we need the Malbec for the blending. It tames tannins. And so when we decided to come out with a blend that was based on Malbec, we thought Lion Tamer would work. We take the lion reference off of the Hess family crest, which is right here, which you can see. And that crest has been on every bottle of wine we produced. And our first vintage was 1983. So
what's the difference regarding to the age of the Malbec compared to the Cabernet into your wine, the second one?
Yeah, the Cabernet is typically a little bit older. However, we are now replanting some of the oldest vineyards. And the Malbec would be younger, but not in all cases, because I not only planted Malbec, I grafted Malbec. You guys know what grafting is? You take an old vine, and as long as it's suitable, you chop it off at the base, and then you stick a couple of buds of the next variety that you want, and you graft it in, and it grows with those roots in the ground. It grows that new vine up. And the advantage of doing that is when you plant a vineyard, you have to wait 3 or 4 years before you get one crop, and if you graft it on, you get a first crop that very same year. Very small, but you can get a crop faster. All this wine will go to barrel, and so if I have a barrel lot that's 100 barrels, then it has 40%. So 40 of the 100 will be brand new barrels, and then the 60 other barrels will be various ages from 1 year up to 5 years old. Yeah, and then we make the blend at the end. Yep. So the Lion Tamer Red Blend is now in the lower right-hand corner. Okay. 60% of the blend is Malbec that we grow up on Veeder. 15% Zinfandel, 15% Petit Syrah, and the remaining 10% is Cabernet and Petit Verdot, if I'm not mistaken. We don't have a formula for this. We change it every year. But what's cool about this wine is the wine, I would suggest you taste a whole lot more like Malbec. That if you had 100% Malbec, that's what we see when we say that we like to blend it with Cabernet, because it's rich and it's delicious and it's weighty and it's big, right? So the extraction is, with a red wine, you bring the grapes in, you usually destem the grapes, and all of the grapes and the juice and the stuff go into a tank. It's called must. It all goes to a tank, and the color is coming out of the skins and a lot of the body and the richness. And so the question was, well, how do you ferment them? Because depending on how long you leave the wine on those skins will depend how much you extract out of those skins. And so there's a popular technique called cold soaking, which is soaking on skins before fermentation ever starts. Why is that different? Because once fermentation starts, you turn the solution from a sugar water solution, grape juice on skins, right? No alcohol, to alcohol on skins. Well, guess what alcohol on skins does? It acts like a solvent, right? It's going to extract more out of the seeds, more out of the skins, which is good and bad. And that's where the 1,000 choices and the nuance of winemaking comes in. And so we do things... Millions, yeah. So we prefer to vary it up as to the level of tannin in the grapes. So we don't do just one method, we do multiple methods, and it gives us a better blending opportunity at the end. But I'll leave that for you to be judged after you try all the wines. The winery has gone through a series of hard times in the last decade plus. And it started with the 14 earthquake. So back in 14, we got a 6.0 earthquake in Napa. And it literally, the fault line ripped right through past our winery and through our vineyards. And the winery itself was founded in 1880. So in California, that's old, by the way, 1880. And so while it was reinforced for earthquake, it didn't stand a chance in some of the older parts of the cellar. So at 3:30 a.m. when it hit, which we're very thankful about, that wasn't the middle of a day. I had 3,500 barrels that fell off their racks and became a big jingle pile that took us 2 weeks to undo. And we had 42,000 gallons rupture out of tanks and went busting out the cellar doors and down into our courtyard. Red wine. It stained the decomposed granite red for weeks. And the weirdest thing was, and I was actually not in Napa, which I was sort of thankful for. I was up in Lake Tahoe, and the earthquake was at 3:30. I got a call from the owner at 3:33. And thank goodness I left my phone on. And he's like, Dave, did you feel that? And I'm like, what? And he tells me what was going on. And so we quickly got into the car and got down there by daybreak. And the weird thing is that with Facebook and all the social media, people were taking pictures of the wine stains coming down the driveway and in our gardens. And I had people for the next week show up at the winery wanting to see the carnage, basically, as we're trying to clean up with no power and no water and et cetera. So that was kind of the fire, or that took us down to the ashes. We'll get to that, yeah. So it was a mixed blessing, right? I mean, I am the winemaker. I'm not part of the family, but it was another situation where the family had to step up, and it was the oldest part of the cellar that just got hammered, and we needed to renovate that area anyways, but it was quite expensive. So they really stepped up in a huge way. It took us 3 years and almost $6 or $7 million, but we renovated the space from kind of an old school. The winery was originally Christian Brothers Winery. And as a matter of fact, the Christian Brothers order lives right next door to us still. And so it was older tanks that didn't really fit what we were doing with these red wines. And so we replaced all the area with state-of-the-art red fermentation systems and this optical sorting unit, which is also state-of-the-art.
Really cool.
Yeah, it takes, when you destem grapes, you can get little bits of stem and pieces of leaf in there. And this optical sorter will take jacks, exactly. It goes on a high-speed belt. There's high-intensity lights with cameras, and the machine will eliminate anything that you screen for. So you wind up in a picking bin with grapes that look like caviar or blueberries, just absolutely clean, and it does make a textural difference in the wine. So we were very, we wouldn't have went the earthquake again, but yeah, and then so that was 14, and then we did lose our crops in 17 and 20 because of the wildfire. In 17, it was all around the winery and our vineyards up on Veeder, and in 20, it wasn't as close, but the smoke tainted the fruit. And you can't use the fruit when the smoke gets into those grape skins. It leaves a terribly, in a red wine, the signature is a terribly astringent wine. Oh no. No, we knew better because we'd seen it in 17. As a matter of fact, in 17 we tried a few lots and we picked some. In 20 we didn't even pick. We just, it was so bad. So we've gone, a couple of hard times, but it's, again, we've been there for decades. The winery is committed to the family's committed to the wine business, and, we're not going away anywhere. Middle back row, it should be the Iron Corral, red stripe. So, like I mentioned to you, we started off by investing in vineyards, and we were very fortunate. In 2018, we were able to acquire the Iron Corral vineyard. So it's the newest vineyard into the Hess family fold. We chose this vineyard because Mount Veeder is in the far southwest corner of Napa Valley. We actually, from our vineyard up on top, we can see the Golden Gate Bridge. We can see the bay, it's right in front of us. You can see the city skyline when it's not fogged in. So we're very south towards the bay. This vineyard is not southwest, but it's northeast. So all the way diagonally different away. The reason I explain that is because it's a totally different situation up there. It's not mountainous, but it is rolling hills. Different soil type, but still the type of soil that doesn't like to support big wines or big vines. The vines have to struggle in the site. They make somewhat tannic wines. So the deal with this wine is interesting vineyard, but a tough place to grow grapes. This has got a high magnesium soil, and for the soil scientists out there, this is called a serpentine soil. Magnesium is toxic to grapevines as well as other plants if it gets in a high enough concentration. This has a low to moderate concentration, and so what it does for us is it keeps the vines in check. It doesn't allow them to get too happy We don't want vines that are overly vigorous or vegetative. We want vines that grow just enough leaves to get the fruit ripe. We want the vine to know that, hey, the business of the year is growing grapes, not growing leaves. So this magnesium keeps things in check, and that was one of the reasons that we bought this vineyard. To me, this vineyard, this is the 2021 vintage. We bought the vineyard in 18. Our first vintage was 19. We had to skip 20 because of the wildfire. So this is technically just our second vintage. 21, an excellent year to look for Napa Cabernet. And why is that? It was the tail end of a long drought, like a 5 or 6 year old drought. 21 was the worst year of the drought in terms of growing grapes. But the benefit for you is that it made really concentrated wine. And that's because there was no water to water the plant. So we literally had to go out at pruning time and not just prune the vines, but we had to cut the arms back so that it limited the amount of growth that the vine had opportunity to grow, because we had no water. We wanted the vines to survive the year. So it did that, and in the process, since there was no water, the vines grew very, very small berries that made really concentrated and intense wine. And this is, I think, our only 21 that we have here tonight, but really good, really concentrated. One of the things that I get off of this vineyard is a kind of a unique signature for me, is like a dark chocolate, almost espresso finish to this wine. So taste it, exhale, and see if you don't get a little bit of that bitter chocolate kind of sensation. But in good vintages like the 21, I would expect this wine to age 15, 20 years and still retain the freshness that you find on the glass tonight, which makes it a really great wine to lay down and not be afraid. I always laugh when I have friends come to the winery and they're like, "Can we get you a discount?" I'm like, "Yeah, you can get my discount." "Okay, I'll take one." I'm like, what is wrong with you? You know, buy a case, buy 6, buy 12. You've got the next 20 years to open these wines, you know? They're not gonna go bad. I personally like I'll be honest, like this is brand new for us, so it's the one I can really talk about is Veeder, because we have vintages that go back to the early mid-80s on that. I like the wine with like vintage date plus 10. When it gets past that point for me, I think for me, I'm not normal. I taste young wines for my career, right? I mean, I sometimes come out and try the bottled stuff, but I'm tasting the 24s out of the barrel. So I'm used to very young wine, and I kind of like that fruit and that spice more than the mature themes that I find. So, but yeah, beauty is in the eye of the beholder for this, for sure.
Aging your wine, what kind of corks do you use?
So that's a good question. We've gone the gamut. We use natural cork, but we also use DM. So you can see DM here, 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 and here. The only one that's natural is the Veeder, which we're kind of holding out on still. And the deal on cork is this. You know, 20 years ago, corks were very unreliable. And I would also, do you know what DM is?
No.
Okay. DM, this is a really good example. I mean, you can pass these around. I hate to say this, but like, do you know what particle board is? They're manufactured corks out of ground up cork bits. No, it's cork that was ground up. And 20 years ago when they first started this process, these corks were terrible. Well, they had the highest TCA rating you could want. But they developed a process now where they can take all these small granulated bits of cork and clean them to where they extract all of the mold precursors that makes TCA or a corked wine. So the beauty of these corks is that, honestly, since we started using them, I've had no issue with a bad bottle, which is great. And so they're gaining prevalence, but it's because they figured out the technology to do it. But I would also tell you that natural cork has gone through the same thing.
What about plastic corks?
The deal on the plastic corks is the same thing. In the beginning, they were terrible. And that's because they took plastic and they threw in a plastic mold and they molded the plastic. And the problem with that was they never got all the air bubbles out of the inside. And so you put these things in there in your wine, and within 6 months, some of the wines were oxidized because the air was leaking through, this interface between cork and glass. But, and again, like 25 years ago, they improved that process. A new company came out with a different way of doing it. And those corks are also, in terms of keeping a wine good without cork characters, they're really bulletproof. I mean, they work really well. Excuse me. The downside of plastic corks is longevity, and they're working on that. But typically, those would hold a wine good for like 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, and
but
she was asking about screw tops.
Yeah, then the companies are coming out now with plastic corks that they say could go 10 and 15 and 20, and they probably can, because it's a manufactured thing, and it, like a natural cork, has a variable amount of oxygen that will go through this little interface that you don't think things can go through, where the cork meets the bottle. It's natural. So screw top we also use and we like.
You do?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I would not,
White wines? Do more white wines?
I like it on whites better, but we do use it on some of our less expensive Cabernets, the more everyday style of
Why do you
Cabernet.
like it better on whites?
It keeps things fresher, I think. And I also like the ease of use, quite frankly. And there was a time where I was dead set against them,
I was too.
but it is nice.
Really cheap wine, yes.
Yeah, and no longer is that stigma there. No.
To lower your carbon footprint too.
That's a big part of it, and the bottles that we use and the packaging that we use is we are trying to lower the footprint, for sure.
You do have a plastic cork called pump. Every single time you use to pour some wine, at the end you can put this plastic cork and remove whatever oxygen is inside out. You can keep your wine for 5 to 6 days. It's not going to change really too much, but you have to be every single time doing it. If one night you forget to do the special exercise to remove the oxygen, that's it.
No problem.
But-
I'm gonna have a bottle for 5 days anyway.
You walk.
Yeah, that a girl. Me neither. This
What are you waiting for?
is too complicated for me.
Maybe 2 days. Maybe.
Okay, should we try the last Cabernet?
Yes. Perfect.
Let's see, back left. Should be the only one with wine in it, I hope.
Correct.
All right. So
Yes.
this is the first wine the winery made. This is what got Donald hooked into the Napa Valley. He was this Cabernet. He always wanted to make, he wanted to make big Cabernet. Every time he'd come out to the winery, he'd tell me, Dave, I want to make Cabernet with eagle talons. And I'm like, all right, Donald, all right. And it was not a problem because Mountain Cabernet has a higher tannin concentration than Napa Valley. We can measure that. In the old days, we couldn't measure it. Now, in the lab, we can measure it and see visually that the Cabernet has more tannin up there, which is a good thing and a bad thing. Because too much of a good thing is, that's right. So it's a matter, that's what we do is try to balance that extraction to get the good tannin out that promotes ageability and mouthfeel and richness without that sensation. I mean, we've all had it when you've had Cabernet that leaves your mouth taste like you bit into the inside of a banana peel.
Well, it's also,
If you've never done that, try it.
Like in the test.
Or a
it's
tea.
Teeth. Like you want to lick your teeth. The teeth
Yeah, it's just at least so dry, It's like, I mean, we made plenty of those wines in the 80s and 90s, but now we know that we don't have to make those wines for successful ageability or for, mouthfeel or texture. There's a better way to do this. These vineyards are at 1,000 and 2,000 feet up above Napa Valley floor. The Cabernet is grown on our vineyard Veeder Hills, which is a beautiful vineyard that's planted just to the ridgetops, so it gets maximum sun exposure. And those ridgetops and the soil profile have very thin soil, so it's clay loam over shale, and the soil depth is maybe 24 inches before it hits rock. So the roots go down, and they're unable to penetrate, and so then they spread laterally. And what that does, again, and you're going to think really mean to these vines, but we want smaller vines because small vines create big wines. And why is that? Because we want the berry size to be small. We don't want them to be plump like your table grapes that you buy at the store. We want them to be tiny, like petite pea size, because the concentration and the flavor comes from those skins. So we like smaller vines that grow up maybe 4 feet shoot length, stop, have beautiful distribution of fruit on the bottom, and they make fruit forward, very classically oriented Napa wines. Yeah, dry farming, my take on dry farming is that it's, you have to have the exact right condition.
Yes.
It's not truly dry farmed. There is moisture down there that the plant's finding. Just like your tomato plant, if you don't water it, it will die. So you have to, if you have a perfect situation, then it works really, really good.
But that's like the new.
It gets a lot of hype. Yeah,
Exactly.
it gets a lot of coverage, I should say.
Publicity.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
Favorites? Did you like them all? So when you're at a wine tasting, be aware. You know, if you've tasted 20 Cabernets and you're going, wow, all these other ones are tannic. Why are they also tannic? I mean, you can get a buildup, which is why it's great to have some water or a little nosh of some food. When I taste the winery, I like just having my water glass there and just kind of reset every once in a while, because you can get that accumulation. We don't have it here because it's just coming out, but in our Maverick line for the first time in 2024, and we're just releasing it to the market, we have a Sauvignon Blanc as well to offer. So you might look for that. I don't have any on me.
How is it aged? How do you do it? Is it like a
Sauv Blanc?
They call it like a like from where I'm from, they call it California Sauv Blanc as opposed to New Zealand or Australia.
Yeah, well, I'm a big believer in no oak on the Sauv Blanc. So I like just pure stainless steel, cold ferment, in the winery for maybe 4 or 5 months and then out.
How is it?
Fresh. High acid,
Okay.
very distinctly varietal.
Okay.
So
is it more like the capsaicin from the, not capsaicin, but the green pepper, grass? It's usually Cabernet, sorry, California Sauvignon Blancs are less like.
Than New Zealand.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I would put mine somewhere in the middle. I think in California, a lot of people dumb it down. Like they're afraid of the real raw character because it can be really herbaceous, right? But I think that's what makes it interesting. Herbaceous and citrus driven, limes, lemons, maybe some grapefruit, which is New Zealandy.
Yes.
And always high acidity. And Sauvignon Blanc is a summer wine, just like rosé. You want it to be clean and crisp and good at acid. Because, I mean, when it's hot outside, these wines are great, but you're probably not going to have a big old glass of Lion Tamer red and feel refreshed, you know? But if you have a nice rosé or a crisp white, it picks you up a little bit. You feel better, you know? And so there's a wine for every time. These wines are perfect for tonight.
70 degrees outside.
I'll throw one last thing that I think I neglected to say, but for me it's interesting, and I was really happy when we came out with the Lion Tamers because Malbec has been such a big thing, and I guess I've left my fingerprint on Mount Veeder is the Malbec that we planted. But this blend is very unique because, and I don't know, you guys correct me, but I don't know of any other red blend anywhere that's based on Malbec. And this is based on Malbec at 60%, always has been.
No, especially in
So
the Napa Valley because
Oh,
you
it's-
have,
yeah.
I mean, you have Farniente. It's
different.
Like looking at something like
Yeah.
Farniente is so, their Cabernets and their Merlots are so forward and they're so heavy
Yeah.
that I just know. But this is, and Cabernet, I always like shy away from Cabernet just because I've tasted Farniente for so long and other ones that are just so, can't do it.
Yeah.
These were amazing.
Well, good. Thank you, guys. Any more questions?
You said on the blend, you vary it every year, but
We do.
you're saying that is it always 60% Malbec?
No. No, it's been as low as 45, and as high as 65. So the deal with the blend too, which is different than the Cabernets, I think, is when we set out to make this, the first one, it's like, okay, we're gonna make this blend on Malbec. And so what I would equate it to is like, everyone likes to cook at home, right? And you know, when you're making a dish, and maybe a pasta sauce is a good example, you probably don't follow a recipe, but you have this idea in your head of what you want that sauce to taste like. And so you start putting stuff together in the pot to get you there. And if it's too acid, maybe you add some sugar. I don't know. But in our case, what we look for is ripe lots of grapes. So nice ripe Zinfandel, ripe Petit Syrah, and the Malbec is naturally in this vein. And so we have this idea in our head, and that's what we blend to. So some years it's got more Vedra in there. It's had Carignan in there.
Do all this start a new year with last year's exact formula and see how it is?
No, but what we will, once we get down to the final couple, we will pull a bottle or two from the previous vintages to see how consistent it fits, and just to check it in. It doesn't influence us completely, but I think it's good, instead of swerving. But for those that look at the labels, and it's never you guys, it's always distributor people. And I'm standing up, giving them the new vintage, and they're like, "Oh, I see you have 3% Mourvedre in here, and you didn't last year. Or, I can really taste it." And I'm like, "Get out of here! You cannot."
I like that idea of Cabernet and Malbec. I've done Cabernet and Merlot and Petit Syrah, but not that. So I think I'm going to do that one this year.
Yeah, try it.
Talking about enjoying wine, you do have a gift certificate tonight, so please try to use it for all the wines that we have been testing tonight to support our friend. Next wine tasting will be next Friday, May 23rd, and we will do the 5 best rosé that we do have at the store. Following Friday, we will do a champagne wine tasting. Again, I recommend to book as soon as you can, because many seats will be taken in the next few days. All right?
Nice.
Thank you for everybody to be there.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you all. Thanks for coming out and trying the wine.